Hi guys, it's Chris. Welcome back to my channel. And before I start this video, I do want to mention I am a bit under the weather. I've been getting over a sickness for the past 2 weeks or so. So if there are a lot of coughs or cuts in this video, I do apologize. I'm trying to contain my coughs and sometimes I fail. However, I wanted to film today because it's been about 2 weeks since I sat down and filmed a video. Recently, I've been putting out a lot of my semester at sea videos. I think I have about one more left. Just because my life has been so busy with school, work, this sickness that I have. I've just been all over the place. I have finals coming up next week. It was my niece's birthday yesterday. We've had about 3 separate birthday parties for her so far. It's just been quite the couple of weeks for me. So I feel great being able to just sit down and talk. And speaking of being busy, because I was so busy, I had forgotten back in late March that it was actually my, I don't know what you would call it. I suppose it was my 4-year anniversary of being discharged from treatment for my eating disorder. And whenever I kind of hit those anniversary dates, I like to do an update video on where I currently am in my recovery and all that. However, I have done quite a few recovery update videos in the past couple of weeks, so I thought today we would switch it up. I have decided to kind of share the story, a little story time, of my first day in Inpatient. I went into treatment on January 28th, 2014. I was discharged about 2 months after that on March 18th, and I realized I never actually sat down and kind of told the story of my first day in Inpatient. I don't know if that's interesting or if you care to listen, but I thought it would be a fun video as sort of a reflection on, you know, where I've been, where I've come from, and just how this all began. It's been 4 years ago, so some things are a bit cloudy. I don't remember every single detail about that day. However, what I do remember, I remember, and there are some aspects of that day and parts of that day that I do remember very well, and those do kind of stick out to me. I have, of course, tried to sort of forget this day, like, in my brain, but at the end of the day, it is truly what helped me and saved my life, and that's something to celebrate and talk about. So, without any further ado, here is the story time of my first day at my first ever eating disorder inpatient treatment center. So a week prior to me going into treatment, I met up with my therapist, and she basically told me I had to go into inpatient right away because I had to. And I remember my parents were on the phone with this hospital a few times. Oh, can I come in for an evaluation? And it turns out it was, I think, the next day. My dad got a call one night at like 6 p.m. I just read my journal, so I know it was 6 p.m. saying for me to come in tomorrow for an evaluation at the hospital and to bring some bags just in case. So I did not know if I was going to be staying there or not. All I knew was that I was traveling an hour away to this treatment center where I would possibly be staying, but it was mainly for an evaluation. I remember the car ride there was one of the longest in my life, or maybe it was the shortest. I'm not sure, but I felt like I was giving up my freedom. I felt like it was the scariest car ride of my life. I think I slept on the way there, and I remember thinking this is my last car ride as a free man. I was very dramatic. I was scared because I knew myself in that moment. I knew my disorder, I knew that I needed help, but I knew that the next time I would be getting in this car, I would be a different person mentally and physically, and that definitely frightened me. And it was just a very nerve-wracking car ride. Both of my parents came, so we got to the hospital. There was a parking garage, and I remember you had to take an elevator into the actual lobby of the hospital, and there was a girl in the elevator with me, and I don't know, it's like a thing. I could like sense when somebody else is kind of struggling with the same things. I said in my mind, this girl is here for the same reason I am. And what do you know, she followed me throughout the whole entire evaluation and admission process. It was very odd. So prior to actually getting my room and getting admitted into the hospital, I had to go through this huge evaluation with doctors and nutritionists, and I had to get my blood drawn, an EKG. Basically, they had to make sure that I was their definition of someone who medically needs to be there. They had a few different programs. They had inpatient, partial hospitalization, outpatient, and basically they were trying to figure out which program I had to attend. So that lasted hours. You get your blood drawn, you wait an hour. You get your EKG, you wait an hour. There was even this portion where I had to literally be interviewed by this woman. And I remember nobody who I communicated with that day was very nice. I found it very, very odd that I'm being admitted into a hospital for my eating disorder and nobody is really being too comforting. So it was like a cold atmosphere. Anyway, so now came time for this interview, and basically she asked me everything ranging from what do I eat, like every single day, do I do this behavior, do I do that behavior, how much do I go to the bathroom. I remember her being also a little bit again, just a little bit cold towards me. She asked me when was the last time I went number 2, and I was honest. I said I actually went today. I actually went that day, surprisingly. And she said, oh, well, how? You're not eating. How are you going to the bathroom? You're not eating. And of course that answer kind of led to me believing that, oh, I don't deserve to be here. I'm not really sick enough to be receiving treatment here because I went to the bathroom today. Yeah, this lady was just not the nicest person. I remember I met her once again when I was being discharged. I never saw her on the floor, but this was a very long interview where she just asked me many personal questions about my eating disorder. And it was hard to, of course, say those things out loud, let alone to a stranger. I knew I would have to be talking about it with therapists, with doctors, but right off the bat, you're just kind of telling your whole story to this random person, and she's writing her notes, she's putting things in her computer. It was just a bit nerve-wracking. Anywho, so that happened. Very long process. After all the blood tests, EKGs, interviews were done, I remember them telling me, okay, we have to like run you through the system, we gotta admit you, this could take several hours. So we actually ended up waiting in the cafeteria, ironically, for probably about 4 or 5 hours. One of my biggest triggers when I was very sick, and honestly still now, is when people ask me if I want food. If they ask me, do I want this, do I want this, do I want this? And that was a perfect opportunity for my disorder to say no, 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 even if I did. I remember it being so funny that this was the day I was being admitted, and like my dad asked me, oh, do you want this, do you want this, because we were in the cafeteria. I was like, no, I don't, even though I did. It was just, that like, oh god. It was just not a fun time. So after hours and hours and hours of waiting in the cafeteria, I think we ventured over to the lobby where the entrance to the unit was, and that's when somebody came out to me and said, okay, we're admitting you, we have your room ready, let's go. I remember entering the unit. The unit was locked, very closed down, off to the side. It was a fairly small unit, and the first thing I had to do in the unit was get weighed. They had to set my goal weight, so they had to weigh me for my current weight, they had to get my normal weight and my goal weight. It just so happened that this day I was wearing boots, and those boots had maybe about 2-inch heels. So they actually did my height 2 inches over, therefore my goal weight was a lot higher than I expected. It was almost 100 pounds from what I was. I was brought to my room, and I remember the first thing I had to do was have all of my bags checked. So all my bags, all my clothes had to be checked, searched through thoroughly, which I totally understand. I totally get it. I was just not expecting that. I remember I brought a magazine with Ellie Goulding on it, who is my favorite artist ever. She is like the one person who I just am always so inspired by, and she was on the cover of Cosmopolitan that month, and so I brought like, I think 3 copies just because I wanted to have a picture of her in my room. And the nurse got so angry. She said, oh, these magazines promote unhealthy lifestyles for women. You're not allowed to have this. And I was like so upset because I wasn't bringing those magazines in the unit for ill reasons. I was just wanting a picture of Ellie Goulding in my room. Anyway, I also had to hand over my copy of Lolita because they had to like scan it and see if it was appropriate for me to be reading. That was a book I was currently reading at the moment. It was just a very invasive process that I wasn't prepared for, and that's why it kind of, okay, like, you know, surprised me. That was also the time when the nurse sort of laid out all the rules regarding bathroom. They would be locked, I forget, an hour after meal times. You would have to ask one of the nurses to unlock it for you. You're not allowed to flush or wash your hands. They have to check the toilet before you do so, and that really surprised me. I understand it now why they had to do that, but purging wasn't exactly a behavior of mine. It never even crossed my mind that they thought that. It just wasn't even in my mind that, oh, they think I'm using behaviors in the bathroom. So that was very odd for me to be like watched using the bathroom and having my business stared at and inspected. I think the first day I did wash my hands with the door still closed, and the nurse was like, hey, you have to open this, you have to open this. Oh my gosh, it was just terrible. It was just all so new for me, and I did not want to do anything wrong. Alright, sorry, I had to just change my battery pack. Anyway, so I remember the whole process of being admitted was over quite late, and by the time I was done, it was mealtime. Now, during my EKG process and all that, I did have to fill out some menus. So I had to choose like my meals for maybe the next 3 days until there was a meal planning session within the unit. So I had kind of had to catch up with my fellow patients. So I had to pick my meals, and I remember the first meal that I had was mac and cheese, pineapple, and chocolate milk. I remember entering the meal room, and there were all these faces staring at me, and I just could not believe I was there. But it was mealtime, and here I am about to have my first meal. Believe it or not, I actually completed, I think I completed my first meal, which was very exciting for me. But it was a bit nerve-wracking because you have this table and there's a nurse here and a nurse here, and they have their little notepad looking at the way you cut up food and you take bites of food. They were looking for behaviors that I did not even know that I had or was doing. There was also like dry erase marker boards around the whole room which say the rules: no cutting up into small pieces, no doing this, no doing that. Basically, I just remember really being conscious of every single thing I was doing. I was trying to make it unritualistic as possible, and I think because I was doing everything so perfectly, they did think I was doing something eating disorder, you know, I don't know. And it just so happened that the first day I was also sitting next to the nurse all the way at the end. So that was just the cherry on top of the cake. So after the meal, I remember we had to say whether or not we were complete or not. We had to go around the table and say complete, incomplete, saving this for later. I did not know what that was all about. So after the meal, I think we had like a meal processing group therapy session, which was my first group session. I don't think I talked. It took me about 2 weeks to actually talk in like a group because it was just very uncomfortable for me just having to open up so quickly in front of these people who I had just met. You just have a lot of restrictions on what you can and cannot talk about, and you always feel like you're being watched and listened to. I remember there was a camera in the meal room, in the camera in the corner just watching. There are people at the front desk monitoring the cameras, and I remember it was always a joke, are there microphones, can they hear us talking? I'm not sure, probably not. So after that meal processing group, I honestly don't remember much. I went back to my room most likely and just started to unpack my bags, get to know my roommate a bit. I just didn't really know what to do. And I remember just constantly thinking, I cannot believe I am here. I cannot believe this is my life right now. I had waited quite a while. There was a long period of time since I told my parents that I wanted to get help to me actually getting help, and I just cannot believe that I was there in the unit, because there's so many doubts going on in your mind when you have an eating disorder. Oh, am I really sick? Am I really that bad? Do I really deserve to be in here receiving treatment? Do I have to be here? And you're constantly struggling with these thoughts when in reality, yes, you have to be there. But it took me a good maybe week to really just settle in and say, wow, I am here, let's focus on me. I also did not know where the water was. In front of the unit, like when you first enter, there was a water, like a thing where you push water to get your cup and you push it for water. I did not know that was there. So I hadn't drinking anything but that chocolate milk that day. And I was so thirsty, and I remember just trying to go to sleep thinking, I am so hungry, I am so thirsty. Anyway, I guess I eventually fell asleep, and then the following day, it would really begin my stay in treatment. You have to wake up early, get weighed, do your vitals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, various group therapy sessions, nutritionist, dietitian, therapist, doctor. It sounds like a lot right now when thinking about it. It was a lot, but you definitely do get into a routine, and the more far along you are, it definitely becomes more like you know more about what's gonna happen and what's not gonna happen. So yeah, that's really my first day, and I would talk more, but I've literally cut this video 10,000 times because I'm coughing. I'm so sorry. I guess to end this video, I do want to just say that although I do have some of these negative memories of being in treatment, ultimately it did save my life, and I cannot be more grateful. So that's really all I wanted to say in this video. Just remember, if you are looking into going to treatment or inpatient or any recovery program, they're all different, so what I experienced may not be your experience, and you are always making the right decision, no matter what your disorder wants you to believe. Entering that treatment center and doing what your therapist says, you are making the right choice. And with that all being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, let me know, because I will do more story times about my inpatient stay in the future. I love you all so much, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys!